and it's more general. Yeah, that's what I remember.
Right, good. So thank you. What about Nastya? Yeah, Nastya, please.
Yeah, I remember that stylistic is a branch of linguistics, and actually it studies the principles and results of the choice and usage of lexical, grammatical, and phonetic, and the other language things. And its aim is to transmit ideas and emotions in different communication settings, in different discourse.
Right, okay. Thank you, girls. Your opinions are quite precious. What about other girls and boys? Well, we have here. Well, I'm going to ask some like random people if you do not if you're okay with that, right? So Marzia, please, could you tell me what do you remember about the stylistics? What is this about?
Hello, teacher. How are you? So from what I remember and from my notes, it's more like stylistics, more about meaning, meaning of the whole the sentence or the context, rather than going deeper into details, something like that.
Well, so it was mostly about lexicology. So lexicology is about meaning, it's about the etymology, right?
Yes.
Still, thank you. Thank you for being here. Right, what about stylistic? So remember in the very beginning, we discussed that stylistics is about the literary texts. Yeah, it used to be about literary texts, but nowadays stylistics looks not only at the literary text as the sub-branches of stylistics, not sub-branches, they are nowadays the branches of text linguistics, of stylistics, as discourse analysis, as text linguistic approaches. Stylistics also looks at the any kind of text nowadays, any kind of. It used to be the formalists, yeah, used to consider stylistics as the branch of linguistics that focuses on literary text and their linguistic features of the literary text. But nowadays, literary texts are not that famous, yeah, right? Are they? We don't really look at the literature as the means of learning the language. Do you agree with that, Naila?
Yeah.
Laura, okay, thank you. What about Naila?
Because
What do you
nowadays
think?
we don't
Uh-huh.
work. I mean, this is actually true. I mean, mostly we don't work with the literature pieces nowadays. We just work with the general texts most of the time.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you, Laura. So just because the trends in the language has changed, we are actually the stylistics is adapting to the new today, let's say, in that very sense. So you can be quite surprised, but during the course we will be looking not only we will be working not only with literary text, but with just normal texts in different styles as official text, academic texts. So depending on your mood, depending on your preferences, we will be working with different styles, different papers, different text of different styles. That is very interesting that you can even work with the movies, with the films and their scripts. You can work with the songs. So you are actually quite free to choose any kind of text to work with during the unit of stylistics. So, all right, okay. So actually, stylistics has a very rich, let's say, rich history, and many of people claim scholars claim that stylistic emerge from the Russian formalist circle, literature circle of Russian formalists. However, if we look at the depth, we may understand that these scholars, Shklovsky, Jakobsen, they did not find those things. They did not find the idea. They were leaning on something, right? They were leaning on some kind of teachings, and they developed the new idea themselves. So Burke, he's a very nice author that wrote that very book. If I'm going to open it, I hope it's going to, pardon. Berkey or Berg, sorry, as we call it, the Routledge Handbook of Stylistics. This is the book you're going to work with. Right, here it is. Michael Berkey, or Berg, I don't know how it's actually spelled. We were going to work with that very book, and Michael Berg actually claims that the history of stylistics started in the 5th century before century, and the development of stylistics started when democracy in Athens emerged. So when you will be asked about the history and the year or the century when the stylistics had its first origin, you can say, oh, I associate that we associate the stylisticians associate the development of stylistics with the democracy, the development of democracy in Athens. So you may just remember that 5th century BC, democracy in Athens. This is just the time when stylistics somehow had some developed and grounded its roots. Yeah. All right. So actually, as we talked before, sorry, one moment. So actually, as the Berg says, stylistics is based on poetics and rhetorics. And if we remember, poetics is mainly is emerged from the Aristotle's works. And in his works, Aristotle focused on 3 main points. Yeah. So when he was looking at the poetic works, when he was criticizing, when he was analyzing them, he was looking at these 3 points. So the first one is mimesis, it's imitation. The second one, catharsis, about cleansing, or as we call it, narration. And the third one is about the plot structure. So the plot structure itself is being classified into 3 subdivisions. They are Marcia, Peripetia, and Anagnorisis. I'm not sure. I'm not good at Greek language. I hope it's not much. I'm not being mistaken in reading, because I'm reading it according to my background, according to my phonetical background. Okay, so this is actually called the classical heritage of stylistics, both poetics and rhetorics. So what is mimesis? So it is about imitation. Actually, Plato, he was the teacher of Aristotle. He gave the definition, let's say, to mimesis. So mimesis from Greek is translated as something like imitation, yeah, or it can be also translated as copying or representing something. So what is a mimesis? Mimesis, this is, it is when the author is speaking in the voice of his or her characters. Yeah. When it means that author is somehow imitating the voices. So, for instance, we have when the author is sending the messages, the meanings, some kind of knowledges through the through the through the dialects of his characters, and it happens in many poetical pieces, in many of normal fiction. It happens quite often. What about the catharsis? It is about cleansing. It is called cleansing, or sorry, translated as cleansing or clearing something away. And probably you have heard this very term, during the analysis of different films. Those students who are interested in cinematography. Are there anyone who is a lot interested in video, in cinematography? Guys, you may have probably heard about that one. So actually catharsis equals generation. So Plato told that narration or catharsis, it is when the author speaks in his own voice. So when the author is narrating the message or the situation or the story is being narrated by the author himself or herself. Right. Okay. And the third one, it's about the plot structure. And Aristotle developed some kind of a classification in that very sense. So the first one is hamartia. Hamartia is when it is we have that very structure in the development of the story, like the beginning of the story, the culmination of the story. I forgot the very names, the terms for them, but the culmination and the ending. So the beginning, culmination, and the ending. It is something like that. But hamartia is translated from the Greek as error or mistake. So what it means hamartia is some kind of a tragic flaw. Imagine there was a, can you think of any stories, any pieces, literary pieces, where we have one protagonist? Can you provide me with examples? Anyone? Yeah. Okay, Nazım Sergazı, can you please help me? Any literary pieces where we have a protagonist who makes mistakes? Mhm. All right, I cannot hear you, fortunately. Okay, Bayjan says.
What about Daisy Miller? Is it?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
What about Daisy Miller? Daisy Miller.
Daisy Miller. What is it about? I have never heard about this one.
I heard about the story. Okay.
Yeah.
The story about the girl, a different girl, and that behaved not in a good way in Europe.
And okay, so what was her mistake in that very sense? What did she do wrong?
Actually was from America, and she appeared to be in Europe because of her mother's illness, and she behaved inappropriately according to the European standards. So she was very, I would say, I forgot like the English word of легкомысленная.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, according to the European society, she was like this, but actually there was a lot of reasons why she was in this way. I mean, the mistake was in them, not in her.
All right. So
Can I say,
yeah, yeah. Is it?
for example, in Romeo and Juliet, in the end, Romeo thought that Juliet is dead, but it wasn't like that.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Yep. It can be the hamartia. So actually, the hamartia is when the protagonist is doing some kind of a mistake. Yeah. So we have a protagonist. He is or she is going to. She is being characterized, described. Yeah. And in the very development of the story, he or she is suffering because of his or her mistake. Yeah. And then this is the first let's say stage in the plot structure that was given by Aristotle. And the second one is the peripeteia. It is something, that kind of a stage in the plot development when any kind of change happens to that very protagonist. So the protagonist made a mistake as hamartia, then there some kind of change happened, peripeteia, and in the very end, anagnorisis happens. That is some kind of recognition. It is when the character realizes or understands what he or she has done wrong. Yeah, it's something like hero's journey. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Bajan. So this was the golden medal, let's say golden medal, golden standard that was provided by Aristotle. So if you remember in Greek mythology, there are many stories where in Greek literature as well, where the where the characters, where the protagonists, they are born, yeah, they have some kind of history, stories behind them, some kind of background information, then they do any kind of mistake in their life, in his or her life, yeah, and some kind of changes happen because of that problem, because of that mistake or error action that the protagonist had done, and then in the very end, the hero or the protagonist makes the conclusion on what he or she has done. So this is the development. And yeah, Baijan, you are absolutely correct about hero's journey. It is some kind of the hero's journey thing. Yeah, probably you know about the hero's journey, as Baijan knows. Yeah, anyone who has heard about it? Shola, do you remember the hero's journey? Okay, Shola. All right, seems like she's not listening. No. Okie dokie. So those who do not know what hero's journey is, let's have a look at it. Actually, if I'm not mistaken, I have a thing. No. Right, nope.
Sorry. Just repeat the last one.
Last one.
Peripetia and the last one.
What do you mean, Salda? Last one?
Like notices, right?
Yes.
Oh, the notices. So I was talking that the points of the points that oh, the last point you mean? Anagnorisis, yeah. Right. that they are quite similar. They are quite, okay. The hero's journey and Aristotle's development in plot, they are quite similar. So as you may see, can you see it, the hero's journey chart?
No, unfortunately.
Hello guys, can you see that?
No.
Can't.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, sorry. I will just copy that one then and put it into PPT. Pardon me. Thank you, Baijan, for reminding me that one. Right. Oops, oops. So yeah, okay. So this is about the thing. So here, the hero's journey actually consolidates with Aristotle's plot structure. So when the hero or protagonist, he's like calling to adventure because of he's living in his comfort zone or she's living in his comfort zone. Okay, let me refer as they. So the protagonists, they are living in their comfort zone and in their normal world. Yet, in order to go, so they have that call for adventure, and they go into different place. Yeah, they're meeting some people, meeting mentors, and they have some kind of failure or trials, right? And after that very trial, there is happens that very stage, the death and rebirth. Yeah, and after that change, that was developed because of the trial, the atonement happens. So the person is realizing what has happened to him or her, and they are starting to think how to live the life, getting some kind of knowledge, getting some kind of experience from the trials and failures they undergone, and they are getting that gift, yeah, reward in the end. And again, the story, the journey starts all over again. And I think actually this thing happens in your life as well. Yeah, you, for instance, you as children of your parents, you flee from the place of your parents, right? You came to Kaskelen, and now you are having some trials and failures, probably time to time, as the studies, and this is your hero's journey. And then you will have some kind of revelation in your experience. You will find some changes. You will not find itself but yourselves, but later you will notice that you, because of that experience, because of that journey you chose, you undergone some changes. You finally got some changes in your character, uh, in your personality, yeah. And then you're just returning to that very journey again, because after the end of the university, after you graduate, you will get the new challenge again. You will get the job thing, yeah. After the job, getting job, you will get the family thing. After the family, children, and this is the vicious circle. And this vicious circle is nowadays called as the hero's journey. Thank you, Bajan, for reminding me about that. But back then, Aristotle just divided into the three points, like Marcia, Peripeteia, and Agnoresis. So these are the three structures, points in the plot structure that even today are quite actual. And many creative writers, yeah, many authors, when they write, they are masterpieces, they actually lean on that very chart, on that very hero's journey thing that was in the very beginning developed by Aristotle. Yeah, you will see that. All right, so you can have a look at that. These are the elements of ideal plot that Aristotle prescribed, yeah. So the first one is that the plot should consist of a single issue. So there should be only one problem in the plot. So I hope you do understand what plot is, right, guys? Okay.
Yes.
Good, thanks. Right. Plot is sujet, if I'm not mistaken, in Russian. Those who do not know what plot is, yeah. So plot itself should have only one problem. So if you read any kind of book, yeah, any kind of narrative book, any kind of poem, you will not encounter two problems, or it is quite rare when you encounter two problems. Mainly, usually, sorry, the main hero or the protagonist is having challenges, and this is as the one issue. We do not see two protagonists usually, two main protagonists. Usually in one narrative, in one poem, we have only one issue, and all the scenes, all the happenings are going around that very protagonist and his or her issue. That is what you should remember. And the next thing that Aristotle, let's say, prescribed as a medicine, that they can be simple, yeah, or complex. The plots can be both simple and complex. And there should be kind of there should not be any kind of elements of recognition, yeah, in the simple plots. And in complex plots there should be the complex plots need some kind of reversals, they need some kind of recognition. So this is what Aristotle made distinguished in that very sense, yeah. And the third one, that is the peripeteia should happen, that hero should have some kind of change in his fate, in his fortune, yeah. Should have some kind of misery if he's leading the happy life, or she's leading the happy life, or vice versa, yeah. And the very interesting thing that in ancient Greek stories, there were few happy endings. Not as in Hollywood today. In Hollywood, all the stories have the good ending. However, it wasn't in the Greek world. I don't know why, but you may probably know that Greek literature is mainly connected with tragedies, yeah? And Aristotle also used to criticize and used to analyze tragedies mainly. All right, so there should be also the hamartia, yeah? So the character itself should not be the bad one, should not be the bad, very wicked person, but the plot itself should narrate about the character error or some kind of mistakes, or mistakes and wrongdoings that person experienced. This should be the main issue in the good plot, yeah. And of course, consequently, the hero must be a good man or a good woman, relatively, yeah. And the sixth one is that the action of the play, of the narrative should unfold over one day, so no longer, yeah. So actually, it shouldn't be too long, yeah. It should show that the story already taken place, yeah. So the play should not be developing during the story, but story should be already given, already finished when the play starts. And about the grammatical aspects, usually such plots, the ideal plots, are provided in reported speech, yeah, and they should look at, they should be used, they should be using past simple, yeah, and they by using the past simple, they should look at the past events, at some kind of flashbacks of the heroes, yeah, that very sense. Yeah, and the next one, that there should be some kind of other characters, yeah, other than the protagonist. Mainly they are people who are quite committed to the main hero. They are family members, they are lovers, they are good friends, they are teachers. So there should not be like stranger people. It means that the plot should make the plot itself should find, let's say, make flourish, not flourish, that's the wrong word, should open up the character, even those these characters are not the main one, they are like the committed ones. Aristotle meant that they should be explicitly presented in the plot. So the people who are reading the play or reading the narrative or the poem should understand who those people are. They shouldn't be just like the strangers, yeah. Right. Also, there should be some kind of anagnosis in the very end. It should be quite predictable, yeah. And in the very end, the person should have that, the hero should have that surprise, yeah. It is quite necessary that he or she has that very surprise. And actually, the very interesting thing that very surprise is mainly predictable by the auditory that is looking at the play or reading the play. In that very sense, as we know, we all, when we are starting to read any kind of story, we know what happens, we predict, yeah, what is going to happen next, or not next, in the end, sorry. So this should take place as well. All right, guys, the question for you, not the question, but some kind of I would like to get some kind of feedback. Any fiction stories or any movies or any kind of I don't know, narratives that you know that are based on that very plot development that was proposed by Aristotle. Do you know any of them? So Laura was talking about the girl, American girl who came to Europe, right?
Yeah,
So,
she came to the Europe days in Miller with her mother because of her mother's illness, and she, I remember this word is frivolous. So she behaved frivolous according to the European society, and in the end, because of this society's, let's say, pressure, she died at the end. So the ending wasn't happy.
all right. So is it? So I don't think that is anything like the hero's journey, right? Okay,
Yeah,
the Wizard
it's not
of
because
Oz.
she didn't kind of recognize it that she
Yeah.
was bad or something like that.
Okay, thank you anyway. But do you guys know any stories that correspond to that very schema proposed by Aristotle? Baijan says the Wizard of Oz, yeah, but I don't know what it is about. Can you, Baijan, explain us why you think it corresponds to the schema? The girls, okay, that would be lovely if you speak, because in the recording there uh, there will not be seen, it will not be seen your writings. The girl gets sent to another world, it's misfortune, okay, right. So anyone, okay, by Jean, thank you very much. Anyone who remembers the plot of the Wizard of Oz, can you remind me what it was about?
Like the girl,
Mm-hmm.
like she was lost, like she was going to the on a journey to the wizard, so that like she can get help to go back to her home. But then during the journey, she realizes that the wizard cannot help her. This is more like an anagnosis, because like she finds out that she had the power in her and not the wizard. Like she moved from a state of ignorance, like she felt like she didn't know anything, but in fact she's the one who had the power to
All
go back
right.
to her state.
Okay, so so in the anagnosis, the girl gained the understanding that she is the one who decides for herself. Is that?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
she's the one who has the power to take herself back, but not the wizard. At first she was keeping all her belief on the wizard, but it's her. It's supposed to be her.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. That makes sense. Yeah, and this corresponds a lot to the schema, to the hero's journey. And if you guys remember, those who used to read Kazakh folklore, remember the story Yırtıstık? Yeah. Anyone remember this one?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I do remember.
Yeah. So
Yes.
In Yırtıstık, the plot has quite the same structure. Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, Yırtıstık was. It is about the young man who went somewhere and he was dropped to the kind of a world. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, he had some kind of challenges, and in the very end, um, he became independent. Or I don't really remember. I used to read it in my very early childhood, but I remember that the plot is quite the same. And in Kazakh folklore, there are so many stories, even the stories about Batars, yeah, even the stories about like Genghis Khan and his warriors. They have the same structure that was prescribed by Aristotle, and I don't know why, but this actually works in almost all the stories. This is the thing. Maybe this is the vicious circle that happens, that is natural circle that happens in our lives. And maybe, I don't know. Yeah, but it works. It works, and Aristotle knew that this is the golden standard for developing the story. All right, guys, it is 10:50. Okay, you have a 10-minute break. See you in 10 minutes. All right, guys, hope you're back. So,
Yes, teacher.
good. So the next part, let's say the next ingredient of the classical heritage of stylistics is the rhetoric. So guys, do you have any idea what rhetoric is? What rhetoric is, in your opinion? Any ideas? No need to be.
It's maybe like the usage of different kind of the literature figures.
Yeah, literary figures are used in rhetorics. Yeah. And being exactly what rhetoric may mean. Okay, I'm going to give you a hint. Rhetoric is mainly used in the speeches of politicians, of influential people, and actually rhetorics helps the influential people who use that speeches to get the hearts of the auditory of the nation. So rhetoric is about the usage of language in order to influence. Yeah. And the very interesting thing is that back in times, yeah, back in the democracy, when the democracy emerged in 5th century BC, there was a need to develop the rhetoric because without speaking clearly, without making clear arguments, you or anyone cannot be true, yeah, cannot get the justice. So it is as the same as in the courtroom. In the courtroom, no one can win the process if he or she, if they do not have the rhetorical abilities, the skills to use the words, the skills to use the language appropriately. So actually, the rhetorical forms of rhetoric, they existed, and they emerged and started to exist within the democratical system, political system of democracy. And the first person who used rhetorics is the Corax. It is believed that it was a Corax. He was the man who lived in Syracuse, in Sicily. You know where Syracuse is, guys? Yeah. And it is the the most southernest point, place in Italy. It is in Sicily, in the island of Sicily. So he used to live in Syracuse, and he helped people back then to speak, to make good speeches in order to impress, in order to win the cases in the court. Yeah, because we know that without knowing how to speak, you cannot influence, you cannot persuade anyone, you cannot teach. Yeah, if your speech is incoherent, has no cohesive structure, you will not be able to explain anything even, right? As future teachers, you know it quite well, in my opinion. So Corax was the person, yeah, he was quite well known in that very sense. And actually, Plato, who was the teacher of Aristotle, he was quite against of rhetoric. He used to think that rhetorics is using too much of style and too much of emotions. Yeah, that people who were teaching others back in ancient Greece to use the rhetorics, they were not good in the eyes of Plato for some reasons, because he said that when the people are touching the hearts of others through usage of emotiveness in the speech and using the stylistic devices that help them to persuade others. There will not be any sense, yeah, any logic and any truth. So Plato was against of using rhetorics in speeches, yeah, rhetorical methods, but he was inclined into logic, into truthfulness, into ethical consideration of the speech, even though in his own works, Plato used very nice devices, rhetorical devices. I don't know why, maybe because he was himself the person who had that very method, who used to let's say apply his own rhetorical devices in the speech. He didn't want others probably to use it or not, I don't know. But Aristotle, he was the student of Plato, and he had that very mood against the stylistics, against the rhetorics as well. But later in his years, he found out that actually rhetoric has some kind of space in linguistics, in the language. And after he left the gymnasium where Plato used to teach him, he wrote, and long after the teachings, long after the studying with Plato, he wrote the work that is called Art of Rhetorics. You can have a look at it, at the shortening of the Art of Rhetoric. That is quite a nice one. You'll find a lot of methods and how to be successful in speeches, yeah, in providing speeches. You will find out them. And actually, this very work somehow influenced the Ciceron. Yeah, remember that one guy? That Cicero found that rhetoric is very influential and it is a lot useful because he believed that rhetoric can teach, can persuade, and can even delight people because of its emotiveness, right? And the very interesting thing as well, that there were other people, other students of Plato who were against of rhetorical devices, using rhetorics in the speech. However, in the end, rhetorics won because people had to defend themselves in the courtroom, yeah? Because back in time, in the juries, in political assemblies, people had to, in the parliament, yeah, in the courtrooms, people who could not speak, yeah, they could not win. Imagine you live in a democratic society, and in order to survive, in order to be validated and verified by the society, let's say, they had to be able to speak. And Plato himself was against of democracy. He used to refer to the failure of democracy. And therefore, he used to be against of the rhetoric. But in the end, anyway, rhetoric took the lead. And even nowadays, rhetoric, it is the kind of an art, yeah, that is used by speech makers, yeah. And you can't even notice how the speeches of politicians, speeches of influential people actually influence you in a huge way, and not in a very influential way, yeah. They not only teach, yeah, they delight some of people. You may remember that the people, the crowd who was standing before the Stalin, before even Nazarbayev, yeah, they were listening to them, even though the speeches had no logic, had no sense, had no content itself. because of that emotiveness, yeah, because of the emotions that were put into the speeches, because of the authority, and because of the coherence between the sentences, they could make people awe, you know, awe, awe, and to be praising those people. This was the rhetoric actually is very, it can be dangerous sometimes. And stylistics, actually, now we will be looking at, emerged from rhetoric because stylistics wanted to look at why rhetoric so much successful, why poetics is so much successful, what kind of devices, what kind of linguistic features are used in those literary pieces, and how they are influencing the readers. This is what stylistics actually was looking at. Okay, so we have 5 canons of rhetoric that was also that was developed by Greek philosophers. So actually, these very the canons, they are somehow help. They are some kind of guideline, logical guidelines, in order to produce the persuasive discourse. So if you want to be influential, persuasive, you should use this kind of, you should follow these 5 steps. So the first one is this discovery. It is when so it is when the argumentative, so any kind of argumentative piece, yeah, written piece or oral piece needs some kind of argumentation, right? So the first step is the discovery, when the person is the speaker or the writer is coming up with the materials for the argument. So something like if he or she is preparing the reader or the listener for the arguments, for the further arguments, and making some kind of, providing some kind of a background. Yeah. And this is usually about discovering and generating arguments. Yeah. And sometimes they are called proofs. Yeah. So in order to have, in order to support your argument, you should have the background for the arguments, the standpoint for your arguments. Yeah. This is about the discovery stage. And the next one is about the ordering your discourse. So after you've done the discovery, after you have looked at the proofs, you gathered all the information, you should structure, you should make an order to your discourse. So what is discourse? Discourse is the process of your speech. Yeah, you can have a look at this very term. This is the speech, talk, and etc. etc. The synonym for that one. And the next one, stylization. It is when you look at your text, whether it is oral or written, and you look how well it is written, how well it is constructed, let's say. So whether it is persuasive enough or not. And then the fourth one, it is about the memorization. It is when you are looking at your speech or writing, and you remember the main points. So you should that you should be focusing on during the speech or during your writing. And the fifth one, of course, is the delivery. It is the presentation of your arguments, your ideas, your proofs in the very beautiful rhetorical manner. Okay, and the very, oh my God, again, the flies, the bees, sorry. And the very interesting thing, that you may probably know, yeah, we have the composition plan. This composition plan was adapted from the book Rhetorica ad Herenium, and it has 6 stages. And you probably know, those who are studying academic language, those who are being prepared for the IELTS exam, you may know that very structure. And probably you're working with the essays, right? Academic essays. You should know, you have to know these steps. The first step is the introduction, yeah, where you are making some kind of you are preparing your reader or listener for what you're going to talk about, yeah, for your topic. The second one is the background. It is where you providing some facts, the background facts that this listener should know about your topic or your argument. Then you just present the arguments as a list. Yeah, you're stating your arguments quite briefly, putting the arguments in favor, you put your arguments in detail, you are like expanding them, opening them. The next about the counter argument, you are where you are looking at the views of your open opponents, yeah, or when you are writing an essay, you are just considering the opposite arguments. And the conclusion, you are just making the sum up. You're summing up the ideas and the ideas and the conclusions that you made during your speech or during your writing or essay, whatever it is. This is the composition plan that was proposed, got in the book. Right. And we have 3 genres of rhetoric. This is the forensic oratory. Yeah. Usually forensic oratory, it is used in the judicial places, yeah, where law is having the first lead, in the courtrooms, in the parliament, yeah, mainly where the laws are being derived, let's say. The second one is about deliberative oratory. It is about the political arena. It is also, we call it political rhetoric. This is about the speeches of politicians, about the their tweets that they tweet on Twitter, yeah, about their posts on Instagram and on their website. It's about deliberative oratory. The third one, epidictic oratory, it's about when someone is demonstrating any kind of material, yeah, when you are displaying, when you are trying to present your speech in public. This is mainly about when you are praising someone or you are going to blame someone. It used to work well in the churches, yeah, and because the churches back in time used to be the main influencer for people's mind. So in the churches, they used to use epidictic oratory a lot. All right, now let's talk about the formalist stylistics. The formalist stylistics, as I have mentioned before, it is let's say the father of stylistics. Actually, stylistics itself emerged from formalist teachings. And the formalist teachings, they started in 1915, yeah, after the revolution thing that happened in Russian Empire. And there were 2 circles that discovered that very discovered the directions in the stylistics. The first one is the Moscow Linguistic Circle. They opened this, which was opened in 1915, yeah, And the second one, it's a Petrograd Society for the Study of Poetic Language. And it was based in St. Petersburg a year later in 1916. And the members, the influential members were Shkalovsky, Jakobson, and Prop. Sorry, I forgot the name of the Prop before. So Shkalovsky and Jakobson there made a huge, as well as Prop, they made a huge discovery back in times. Yeah, what they wanted to say that they wanted to look at the literary pieces in a different way. So mainly the literary critics back in time, they looked at the emotional side of the of literary texts. However, those three, yeah, Jakobson, Skalovsky, and Prop, they tried to make the analysis of the critics of literary pieces more scientific. They wanted to look at them in a very scientific way, right? And also, there were other influential voices in the movement of formalists, the Tomachevsky, Tinyanev, Eichenbaum, also Brick, yeah, if you remember, Lilia Brick, right? She's the lover of Mayakovsky, if I'm not mistaken, right? And her husband, Brick, he was also the one of the some of the voices that influenced formalist stylistics. So, yeah. And the interesting thing that after the Bolshevik Revolution, it was around 1930, the formalist stylistics started to flourish. So it continued to work, yeah, it continued to be there, and they started to be more developed. And unfortunately, when there happened the Stalinistic community came to the empire, the circle, this formalist circle, they were suppressed. So they were downsized for some reasons. Okay, sorry, no, that's not it. So the formalists, what was the concern of the formalists? Formalists were interested a lot in the poetic form of literary language, and the very interesting thing that they were hugely inspired by the ideas of Ferdinand de Saussure. This is the reason we looked at de Saussure and his teachings and his terms, let's say, yeah. And what they looked at the de Saussure's teachings, they were very interested in the symbolism. For some reason, they were somehow reacted a lot on it, and after the symbolism, that after looking at the important parts of the symbolism, they made in their ideas there was preceded a movement of naturalism and realism. So it was actually, we can say that formalist linguists, they were opposing the Plato's and Aristotle's ideas. They didn't develop, they didn't agree with the mimesis thing. Yeah, they thought that art was not imitating anything. That so actually Plato told that imitation, usually writers and poetics, they are imitating. Yeah, they are imitating the characters, imitating the nature, and putting it into the words. But the formalists, they were of the opposite opinion. They didn't say. They said that the poetics should be considered not as the imitation of something, but it should be described and it should be perceived as an art. Yeah, that is the reason they were adopting that aesthetic ideas that came from the visual arts. They were very impressed by the visual arts, and they even worked with the visual arts. And nowadays we have new directions in stylistics where the graphical poems are being discussed. Yeah, an interesting thing that we have that graphical poems as well, not only like poems that are written in words, but they are visualized for some reason. And the interesting thing that the formalists, they were hugely interested in the difference between poetic and non-poetic language. This is the reason nowadays also stylistics is not let's say is not limiting itself with the poetic and literary texts only. Stylistics also looks at the non-poetic language. It is looking at narratives. Nowadays, it is looking at the discourse, everyday discourse. Stylistic analysis is being applied to the analysis and criticism of films, of songs, of speeches, yeah, normal speeches, and even we have the tendency in discourse analysis and corpus linguistics where scholars and linguists are looking at the tendencies of using language in the internet. So on Instagram, on TikTok, they are, let's say, looking at how the speech of modern native speakers or the second language learners changed and developed because of the internet or on the ground of the internet. And the next point is that formalists, they made a structure of narrative. They looked how the narratives are being structured, how the narratives are being constructed themselves. So as Aristotle made the points, the subgroups of the plot development, the same was the formalist. Probably even Hero's Journey was developed by formalist. We don't know, yeah? Right, yeah. Okay. Right, and the next one thing. So why formalists started developing stylistics? So the reason why formalists looked at it because they wanted to see literature in a scientific way. So they analyzed in scientific way. They wanted to see literary text analyzed according to their phonological levels, morphological levels, and according to their lexis, semantics, and syntactical levels. So they made some kind of formal observations. They focused on formal observations, and they looked at how sentences are diverse. So how they are diverse in their phonology, in their morphology, in their lexis. If you remember, in the first week, I talked about we discussed that each author has different style, and a formalist wanted to look how each author differs from each other. Remember the individual style, the term individual style? They looked at the individual style of each author and focused on how each of them differs in phonology and in phonological level, in morphological level. They made the analysis through of the stylistic devices that were used there, and they looked at the emotiveness of them, yeah. And nowadays, stylisticians also like they're continuing to look at it, and they're hugely looking at how the voice is presented in the speech, whether it is written or oral. They are looking at the gender issues in the texts. Also, they are looking at the point of view. So it means how the point of view of the addressor and addressee changes according, depending on the stylistic devices that are used in the text. Yeah. And what I mean by looking at the literature in a more scientific way, it means that they wanted to look at at the literary texts as linguists, not as people from the literary circles, but as the linguists. They wanted to make the study of literature more scientific, so that the literature could get some kind of respect in the intellectual world. So mainly as literature, yeah, in many societies, literature is considered as something entertaining, right? We are reading the literature when we want some kind of a, I don't know, some kind of delight, yeah, some kind of emotional boost, mainly, not only knowledge, yeah. So this was the problem, that people were not serious enough about the literature. Okay, here is the question, the personal question to you. Let me just, okay, Sambat, Sambat, I wanted to ask you, do you read literature, mainly literary pieces, and when do you usually read it? Why do you usually read it? In terms of scientific way, or in terms of the entertaining, like getting some kind of inspiration and all that stuff way?
I read, but not often, and I love to read psychological books rather than fictional literature books, because literature books for me are like, there are more details, how to describe more in literature books, and I don't like such things, so I don't often read literature books.
But when you do read literature, what kind of approach do you apply to the reading process? Do you read it just for fun, or are you do read in order to investigate the language?
Maybe for entertaining. Yeah. When I get bored from psychological books, I read some literature pieces. Okay, for entertaining.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. So, as you see, as we see from the very example, yeah, Sambat's opinion, mainly we read not because of our mere interest in linguistic levels, yeah, of the language, but we usually read in order to entertain ourselves, in order to make just to, yeah, nowadays actually not that many people read, yeah, literary pieces, but those who do read, they mainly read to gain some kind of wisdom, yeah, first of all, to gain some kind of knowledge, but we don't really look at the words as the units of the language. We are not making the linguistic investigation, and the formalists wanted to change that thing. They wanted to look at the literary pieces from that very linguistic way. So this is the reason why stylistic emerged, why it appeared and it was developed. And actually, through the understanding the history of stylistics, you may understand that why we are studying stylistics today. Why you are studying, because stylistics also it's not only about getting some kind of knowledge on how to influence and how to teach better. It also about how to know how the language works in both written and oral texts. So it is about the language also, not only about literature. Okay. So, and Jacobsen himself, he proposed a model of communication. The model of communication that actually quite widespread, and nowadays many of stylisticians, whether stylisticians or text linguists and discourse analysis scholars, they are using this model of communication in order to understand the process of interaction, yeah, linguistic interaction. So the addresser, message, and addressee. So message is the idea. It is the idea that the addresser would like the addressee to get. So addresser, let's take an example. We have a book, yeah, a book by, let's say, one of the book. What kind of book do we have? Okay, my favorite author is Honoré de Balzac, yeah, and when he writes his book, he is the addressee there. So through the book, through his masterpiece, the addresser, who is the author, is sending the message, any kind of message, whether it is the moral message, whether it's just the entertaining message, whether it is some kind of a message on theoretical knowledge. He is being the addresser. He's like sending the message to you. And when you read the book, or when you hear the book, you listen to the book, you become the addressee, the person who is getting the information. Or in easier language, we call it the sender, yeah, person who is sending message, and receiver, yeah, person who is sending the message itself, and the person who is receiving the message. These are the three stages. And actually, this yeah, that very raw material was proposed by Boole. Boole, yeah, I hope I'm, or Buchler, I don't know how it is read. I think Buchler, yeah, Buchler, and Jacobsen changed that very model of communication somehow. He added extra 3 parts to it. So here it is. So what are the extra 3 parts here, guys? So addresser stays the same, right? Addressee stays the same, but what and message stays the same. But what did Jacobsen add here? What changes do you see? What changes do you encounter here?
He included context, and the coding.
Absolutely. So what he meant by that? So first, here is the context. Yeah, the first is the context of the message, not the message itself, but the background of the message. The contact, it is the interaction between the addresser and addressee. And the code, what it meant by code, is the code, or it is the language, or the language that is used in that very utterance in the discourse. So context is the background information for the message, and then itself the message, then the context, the interaction between the addresser and addressee, and the code. The code is the like the language that is being used in order to send that very message from addressee to addressee, right? So this is actually what I wanted to tell you about. Yeah. One more thing here. Jakobsen mentioned why he added these 3 more functions, because he believed that the addressor has the emotive function, yeah, and he thought that that emotive function is being referred to language directed toward the addressee. So the addressor, he is having that function, emotive function that is referring to the language, to the contact, through the contact and through the coding, right? And he or she is directing the the emotive function to the addressee himself. Yeah. So and in the context actually has the, let's say, referential function mainly. So it is so context is mainly concerned with the background circumstances that happened. Yeah, so it is like the context referred to something that prepared the addressee to get the message. Yeah, the message used to have that very poetic function. It used to focus. It used to the poetic function focuses on the message itself. Yeah, it's not looking at the context. It's not looking at the code itself, but mainly on the message, on the information that is being sent to the addressee. The third one, it is the contact, it is the fatigue function, let's call it like that. It is the interaction, again, that happened between the speakers, the addresser and the addressee. And finally, the code, it is considered it is considered that it has some kind of metalingual function. So what it means that metalingual function, it attends to some kind of particular language use. So in order to send the information, to use the emotions and the context, people had to, so the addressor should use that very metalingual function where the language itself is being the instrument, yeah, instrument in order to deliver the message to the addressee. So actually, guys, this is it, what I wanted to tell you briefly about. We have 5 more minutes. If you have any questions regarding the topic, you are free and welcome to ask. If you did not understand some.
Teacher, where we can find some more information about stylistics, about this topic?
Thank you for the question, quite a nice one. I will download the book that I showed in the very beginning. And in the first unit, there are, if I'm not mistaken, 3 or 4 parts on the historical perspectives of stylistics. You will find a lot of information, the broader information. Actually, I took all the information from that book by Michael Berg, the Routledge. It is called Introduction to the Stylistics by the Routledge Book of Introduction to the Stylistics. You will find out it on the Moodle. It will be uploaded today or tomorrow. We'll see how it goes. And I highly recommend you actually to read that one, because the language is not too difficult again. And you will see that the lecture actually is not based. It is just the have the excerpts from that very book. So you don't need to even re-watch or re-listen to the lecture in order to understand all the context. You just read the book, you just interact with the Michael Berg, and you will understand it, I believe. Yeah.
Thank you.
Right? Any other questions? No questions so far? All right, guys. So actually, let me just talk about the plans for the next week's seminar. For the next week's seminar, we will be working with the book itself. And again, we will be working in the mode of Socratic seminars. Yeah, I hope you can hear me properly. Sorry for the background noises. You should be preparing the readings on one of the historical events that influence stylistics. You can take the rhetoric, so one can take rhetoric, the other student can take the poetic, one can take the formalist approach, the second one may take the functionalist approach that we will actually be discussing at the seminar itself, and we will work in collaborative groups. So please be ready for the readings again. Yeah, again, you will get the readings and we will work at the seminars together. Any questions? Any more questions? Right. Okay. So those who are going to have seminars today, later today, or the following days this week, please be prepared with the readings. I ask you, yeah, because we will discuss the lexicography by Fontanella, and it's going to be fun, I think. Yeah. Have a lovely day. Take good care of yourselves. Good luck with your midterms, and bye for today. Bye for now.
Thank you, teacher.
Goodbye,
You
teacher.
too.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Yeah. Bye bye. Thank you too.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care.